Let's go! This box says props. What does that mean?
Well, props is short for properties because the props department takes care of all the different properties, the things that are all the different equipment and things that the ballet uses and owns. So it's kind of all encompassing. And then the props themselves in a show are things that the dancers use during the ballet. They might be fans, or they might be swords, or they might be any number of things, furniture that they might move around are all props, as well as all the equipment.
Okay. Can we see some props today?
Oh, sure we can. Do you have any thoughts about what you might want to see?
No, I have actually no idea.
Do you want to look at some stuff from Romeo?
Okay.
So Romeo has a lot of props. These are some of the props from Romeo that are really just set dressing that we put along the set just to fill it out and make it look cool. But here are some props that dancers use. So we have boxes that we put all the props in to protect them while we move them around.
I bet that'd be tricky too.
And then
These are all the ukuleles that
they
we
are
have.
they are mandolins, like a
Mandolins.
ukulele, a mandolin. And there are a couple of points in Romeo where they are used. There's one mandolin dance during the wedding celebration that a bunch of guys dance around with these mandolins. And then there are 3 separate mandolins that are used by the main characters, one by Juliet, and one by Romeo, and one by Mercutio. And it's leaning against the wall because it tips over when it's open. But then you can see the padding here, and each of them are sectioned off so that once it's closed, they're very safe in there, and we can move the box around without them getting damaged. Another thing that happens in Romeo is there's a big sword fight right at the beginning of the show. So,
And I can see that there's names for the different
right,
characters.
there are names for all the dancers. So these are all the dancers in the show. And like the principal dancers, who are the main characters, are on the top drawers, and then down to the core dancers at the bottom. And so the dancers can then just come to this crate
And then find what.
and find the swords that they want for their role.
I actually think these would be really painful to get hurt by.
I think they would, yes.
Because they look like they're made from solid metal.
These are real fencing. These are called epées. That's the term for this kind. Go ahead and pick it up. It's a term for this kind of a sword, and they use them for fencing, which is dueling, a sport of dueling. So our dancers use these in the show, and they have a choreographed sequence that they fence with. And it's really dangerous to do it if you haven't choreographed something, but you know what? We could do something real quick. Let me show you. So what you do is I'll hold this out, and you come this way with your word and come against, and then I'm gonna go around and against you and come down. That's it, and then around the other way.
Then we swap them. Then we each swap places with each other. So basically,
They
I
will
go
move
down
around.
and try to block your attack.
Exactly.
Then before I was gonna do that, I had you did that, and then I copy you.
Exactly. And, you know, the dancers spend a lot of time rehearsing that because they are all doing the same moves at once. And so during Romeo and when they're rehearsing it, you'll see a lot of the guys backstage with each other doing moves with their arms, and they're just practicing the way they go with the swords. So then during the show, they bring these out and they use them. And there are also, in some sequences, some of the characters use these little short ones. So they have a long sword in one hand and a short sword in the other.
So the long ones are for far combat, then the short ones are for close combat.
Well, they do the main fighting with the regular épée, the long épée, and then the short ones, sometimes they use it to block. And then the other swords that they use
I don't want to get into
are
that.
the lords have a fight with these broadswords. And again, it's very important that nobody uses these without having the choreography, knowing the choreography so they know what each other are doing. Did you feel how heavy this is?
I don't think I can lift that.
And this one, it's a little different.
One.
The two dancers are on stage doing a big fight with these swords, swinging them around, and these are really heavy. So they really have to know what they're doing.
Guys, if they drop it, it could hurt somebody.
Yes, it could.
Paul, what happens if one of the swords break?
Well, when the swords break, a couple of things happen. First of all, we always put some spares. Some spare swords are stuck around the set. Like, for instance, we always stick a couple in through the bird cages you just saw, and we have a couple just off stage in case one breaks, the dancer can run off stage and get it. And then we have to take that sword and rebuild a brand new sword out of the parts.
So how do you rebuild that sword?
Well, I can show you. We have parts back over at that sword box where those were all put together. All the parts for those also are right there in the box. So when we're on stage and something happens, everything's right there so we can just repair it. And hopefully that happens quickly. We always keep spares of things as well.
There's a completely size difference and also weight difference from the short ones all the way to these big actual swords that knights used to use and the medieval
So
ones.
see, for instance, like all the dancers had numbers and names on the drawers for their swords. All their swords also have the same number. And here's one that says extra. So this is actually
One of the ones that you stick on stage
that
in
we
case
put on
anything
stage.
breaks.
So when they get broken,
This is what you stick on stage or leave them off stage. Then run off
Exactly.
stage, then run back in.
so when they break, I don't have any broken blades in here, I don't think. If it gets broken, it usually breaks up here. And about that much of the sword breaks off. They usually break right there. So then we take that sword, and there's a nut on the end of the handle, which is called
a nut exactly?
a nut is this piece that screws onto the threaded handle of the sword blade.
So kind of like a screwdriver, but for
Exactly,
a sword.
the same kind of thing. And it's called a pommel nut.
Pommel nut.
And then the handle just slides
I'm getting really scary.
over the end. Then the cup handle comes off, and then that's the blade. Now, if it was broken, obviously, we would take it and we wouldn't use it anymore.
And then afterwards, you would fix it for the next time.
Then we take a new blade. So I travel
traveled over to
with
here.
a whole bag full of new blades.
Those
so-
don't really look like the blades that we see that's lying randomly.
They're
They're in bag and
they're
they're
different,
really
yeah, and they're a different color. This one, but that just happens to be a different color. So then we take the blade, and it positions in here in a very particular way into this square hole, so that this goes on and it won't turn. All right, because they want to hold it in a certain direction. And then the handle goes back on. And if this were to get broken, I have replacements for that as well.
So probably like 5 to 10 years, they get so old that you need to find a replacement for that.
Exactly. And so we have bags of the handles,
I was thinking
bags of the nuts.
I was wondering what that was, because I saw this and I was thinking like, oh, those could be Nerf bullets. But then,
They look kind of like they could be, right?
yeah, but I didn't know what this was at the moment when
And
I
so
saw
then,
that.
once that's screwed back together,
You have your own.
you have a complete sword. And then the other thing that we do, the swords come, they have just a metal tip. So we take these and we dip these into plastic till they build up a plastic round ball at the end, so it's safer, so nobody can really get poked and hurt. Yeah, so one of the things that we do is when we get new blades, one of the first things that has to be done is dip all those blades into the plastic, which comes in a can like this. It's called Plastidip.
I'd imagine how hard that'd be.
And this is liquid plastic. So we dip the tips in there, and Stephen has a very specific method that he uses to do it. And so he takes them all and he dips them, and he has to do it multiple times to build up a big enough coating.
Years ago, when we played a ballet at the Met Opera House with the American Ballet Theater, I wish I'd had my bike helmet, because one of the stage props, a sword, broke during the ballet, and it flipped up into the air and it came straight down into the orchestra pit right next to the second violins. I wish I'd had my bike helmet that day. It would have been safer. Maybe next time.
And don't forget to come back to ABT Kids Daily for more Winston Goes to the Warehouse.